Hello friends, and welcome back to my mom's basement. Nikon is having a moment right now with the astronaut on Artemis II, bringing a whole host of Nikon DSLRs and mirrorless cameras to the moon.
Through one of those windows, one of our astronauts will be using a Nikon Z5 camera with an 80 to 400 millimeter lens.
So I guess I'll jump on the bandwagon and finally talk about my experience with the Nikon Zf. I've been in love with this camera for the past couple months now, and I can't stop gushing about it. It really is the perfect camera for me and my style of shooting. I've been buying and selling quite a few cameras over the last few years, trying to perfect my setup. And now I think I've found it and I can finally stop thinking about gear so much. I have thoughts, a lot of thoughts. Fujifilm is often touted as the king of making cameras that brings the film shooting experience back. But I'm here to argue that Nikon has made literally the perfect camera, and it takes them just one try. I guess two try if you count the Nikon DF. So, sit down and grab a cup of coffee. Let's get started. First, let's address the elephant in the room. This camera is only 24 megapixels. Is it enough? Obviously. Megapixels are overrated anyways, especially with my use case and my tendency to put a bucket of grain on my photos. I kept thinking I need more megapixels when I knew in my heart that 10 is all I really needed all along. I used the Leica I made for a hot minute last year, and it's the most beautiful 10 megapixel I've ever seen. Society have conditioned us to think that we need like 60 megapixels for cropping power and huge prints. I have to say that I've fallen on this trap too. I thought I needed at least 40 megapixels to crop into other aspect ratios that I like 4:3 or 16:9. I got a Sony a7R II for film scanning a while ago for very cheap, like for $500, and that thing has like 42. I just find it kinda boring and uninspiring. The viewfinder is a bit dim and the manual experience is not great, which is actually the most important thing to me right now. And if I say that it looks kinda ugly, would you think less of me?
I'm a fancy boy.
Since I have that and the camera shoots 42 megapixels, for a while I was like, what's the point of getting another camera if it's less specs? But now I have learned a thing or two about myself. Even if I print huge, for my style of photography, 24 is more than enough. I like adding grain and texture to my photos. And for the size of grain that I like to add, the effective resolution is definitely less than 24 megapixel anyways. Now that I've used the Nikon Zf more, I think 24 is just perfect. The ultra-wide 24:9 style crop was the biggest driver for me to get a high-resolution camera, so I would have enough resolution post-crop. The thing is, every once in a while I get absolutely obsessed with the panorama look, and then I shoot that for like an afternoon and see the photos and realize that it doesn't really fit me. I like a wider frame sometimes too, but I'm slowly realizing that 16:9 is like the more sensible 24:9. It's easier to frame things and still leave stuff out of the frame. In a heavier landscape environment, I imagine 24:9 would be a lot better, but it really requires dedication to the look. With the style of lenses that I like putting on the cameras, 40 megapixels or more are kinda wasted anyway. With lower megapixel count, the lenses don't have to resolve as much, whatever that means. I certainly don't know. I just feel like sometimes the high-resolving, high-performance lenses lose a lot of the beauty and the character in their renderings. I think the high megapixel counts only come to play when you're shooting some massive scenery like the Gregory Cruise and stuff, with tons and tons of details in the background. Again, it's not like 24 megapixel is lacking in any ways regardless. It's still a ton of detail and cropping power. You do just fine with like 3 megapixels, I promise. What is also not talked about often when you're cropping is you're also cropping into the lens, not just the sensor. I feel like every time you crop smaller, you lose a bit of soul of the lens and the image, regardless of how many megapixels you got. It's just better to not fall into that trap and try to nail the photo in camera. This sensor is super clean. It's actually so clean that the photos can display some banding when you're looking on it on your computer. Yeah, I learned that the hard way. It goes away after I put some grain back into the photo, so that's the trick. The low megapixel count also make this camera a low light beast. I'd shoot at 12,800 ISO on this camera no problem, but I never really needed that high. Most of the time I just stay at 800 even and let the IBIS do the work. The size of grain that I like to add is probably in line with like 32,000 ISO, so yeah. The noise of this camera I think has an organic quality to it, whatever the hell that means. Maybe the secret sauce is in the lower megapixels, where the noise appears more coarse. Sometimes I daydream about this idea to shoot this camera at like 51,200 ISO because, you know, it's there on the dials. Maybe with a soft vintage lens as well. Why? Because maybe buying cameras is not about the specs anymore. Old cameras have become so good that the best camera for you is the one that provides you with the best shooting experience. Maybe you just want like small and light cameras like the Lumix S9 or the A7C. Does the camera help you to shoot the way you want to shoot? And do you feel good when you are using the camera? And the Nikon Zf is that camera for me. This camera is just perfect for the way I shoot with the dials and everything. It might not be for you and that's okay. Since I like to shoot all kinds of things and subjects, I want to actually control the exposure settings with physical dials. But hold that thought and I'll explain later why the physical dials are better. I also want to shoot with manual and vintage lenses. And Nikon is the only company right now that actually give a crap about the manual focusing experience. The Nikon Zf and the newer Zs have the manual focusing tools like green box confirmation and IAF with all manual lenses. But hold that thought too. Oh, and the black and white switch. I love that. If you watch my previous video, then you probably know why. It might just be an insignificant thing to many people, but I love it and it's something I use all the time. This camera just gives me the option to set it up perfectly how I want before I even turn the camera on. Why are the physical dials important? When you're shooting different types of photography, you need different types of exposure triangle setup. Maybe I'd like to shoot flash and then I need the shutter to stay at the flashing speed of the camera. Or unless I decided that I need to do high-speed sync. You know, maybe I'd like to direct the shutter and do intentional camera movement. Maybe I'd like to shoot with a fast shutter speed for stealthy candid shots. Or maybe I'd like to stay at 100 ISO to shoot a clean photo for landscapes. Each genre of photography demands a different exposure setup. And I think having the exposure triangles right at your hand at any moment is the optimal way of changing them. When you have the dedicated physical dials, you can prepare your camera for changes in different shooting conditions, like setting the shutter to 1/50 to slow down the snow and rain, or put it at 1/4000 when you're in a fast-moving car and want to shoot outside the windows. I'm also more confident that the dials will stay in place. The command dials so here are very prone to accidental changes. While the Nikon one is nice, at least it takes a bit more force. I can't remember how many times I accidentally bumped the ISO to 12,800 on the GFX 50S Mark II. It'll just give me all the physical mark dies, damn it. To be fair, the Nikon Zf would be even better if the lenses have aperture rings as well. But alas, Nikon just didn't plan for that, I think. At least my most used lens these days, the Voigtlander 40mm f1.2 has one. And sure, you could technically set a bunch of custom profiles on these different scenarios. But for me, it feels more intuitive and you feel like you're in control of what some would say is the only 3 settings that matters. I very much prefer the dials to switching between custom profiles like C1, C2, C3. Next, I want to talk about the manual focusing experience. I think it's the most important feature of Nikon cameras to me, especially the Nikon Zf. The flickering manual focus green box confirmation and IAF in manual focus. Green box confirmation is, well, it's a box that confirms that you have nail focus in that spot. Kinda like a rangefinder. Simple, right? No, it means everything.
What do you mean, everyone?
That even goes so far to say that it's a low-key revolutionary feature on Nikon cameras. It's a feature Leica probably wish they had on the Leica MEV1. It's basically a rangefinder equivalent for EVFs. No longer do I feel held back by my manual lenses when I'm shooting on mirrorless cameras. In 100% of cameras, I always have to do the picking plus punch-in confirmation. And it's a considerable slowdown, especially when you're shooting streets or portraits when you want to catch the moment. If you use picking in your life, you probably know that it's inaccurate as shit, especially when you close down the aperture. Focus picking also vomits out a lot of color when you shoot things further away, even on lower settings. And then you have to punch in for critical focus, which slows you down and takes your attention away from the framing. With the ZF, I can just adjust until the green box turns green and I got focus. It's literally voodoo magic. I still have a button to punch in to confirm focus, but it's mostly because I have trust issues. Manual focus lenses are important to me because of their renderings. I kept thinking back about how beautiful my Voigtlanders renders the scene with my Leica made, and I want that back in my life. Also, I have so many vintage lenses that I want to shoot. This is the Jupiter 850 f1.5 for example. It's like a tiny L39 lens. It's so small and light and cheap too. It's like $100 for this. Some people would say, why don't you just buy this or that clinical sharp lens from Sony's or Viltrox or something? And to them I say,
So is wiping your butt with a leaf, but it's not how a man gets around!
even with landscape photography, I don't like having such a sharp look sometimes. It's just too real, too boring. There's no poetry, no romance to the photos. That said though, it's still not as fast as shooting with rangefinders. For all these faults, the focusing with the rangefinder is very simple. It's just align the box left to right. I actually have an idea for Nikon to improve in this department, which is to have the confirmation sound on the green box when you hit focus. It would provide that extra sensory feedback so you can snap things more quickly. Nikon, please. I guess the reason Nikon do this is they care about backwards compatibility with their old manual lenses, so I definitely give them props for that. Manual focusing is never the priority of any other manufacturers because they want to sell you their modern autofocus lenses and don't gain anything from adding this stuff. Although funnily enough, the Nikon official adapter doesn't have that feature. And you need an adapter like the Megapixel E2Z I have up here, which I'll talk about next. I have a few native mount lenses for this camera and the Megapixel E2Z adapter. This is the Pro Plus, which I actually use mostly to adapt vintage lenses. The reason I chose this is It's the most versatile and sturdy way for me to give so my vintage lenses green box confirmation. You could also go the M-mount route with the TT Artisan 6-bit adapter, for example, and then adapt all your lenses to M-mount. Or you could even use the TechArt TCM02 to autofocus most of your vintage lenses, even provided that they are not heavy. I just find the M-mount middleman to not be as versatile. I think you might get more smeary corners with it. Don't quote me on that though. Heavier lenses would also wear down the TechArt AF adapter more quickly, so I just want to be able to adapt everything to this camera. Like this heavy-ass Canon FD 200mm f2.8 with the 2x converter on it. I think I'm still interested in getting the TechArt AF adapter someday. There's just a lot of interesting M-mount lenses that I might talk about later on. And I think it would be cool to have AF on these lenses. For native lenses, I have the Voigtlander 40mm f1.2. I also have the 24-120s. And then I have this 26 f2.8, which is the least talked about lens. It's just a second focal length in a tiny package that I can just toss in my bag when I want that spontaneous street photography look. I chose the 26 instead of the 28 because it seems to have more of that micro contrasty, Zeiss rendering. The 28 is much cheaper and has more of a classic rendering. There's nothing wrong with that lens. I think I would like it too, but I already have so many vintage lenses that give me that look. And so I figure I'll get the popular 26. And then finally I got the 40mm kit lens. I say that because I actually think this lens is very nice. You may ask why would I get this one when I also have the Voigtlander 40mm f1.2. And obviously the answer is for the autofocus. Sometimes I have to walk my nephew with one hand and then I won't have another hand to manual focus my lenses. I've also been experimenting with a flash look with the Godox IT32. And what I can do with this flash is I can literally just hold it like this because there's a wireless connection of the flash to the thingy here. And you can just do the Bruce Gilden special like this. Well, I would never shoot street photography with that setup. It feels ridiculous, but you can manual focus when you hold the flash like that. So yeah, that's why I got the 40. If you're not satisfied with the Z-mount lenses, you can adapt anything under the sun to the Z-mount. I guess you can adapt Canon RF lenses, but we don't talk about Canon RF here. Just use an E-mount one or an EF mount, or be a nerd and adapt vintage lenses. Sony have a huge lens ecosystem that is like over 10 years old at this point, so there's probably a lens for you somewhere. The E-mount is definitely the most versatile mount after the Z-mount, and that's why I got the Mega Adapt. I don't even want to get any E-mount lenses in the future. Actually, that's a lie. I've been eyeing the Sony 20 f1.8 for a while now, in case I want to get into astrophotography again. And it's usually sold on my local market for like half the price of the Nikon equivalent, so I heard the Nikon is a very nice lens as well, but it's just so expensive for something that I won't be using often. The other thing about Nikon lenses is they don't have aperture rings, but you can actually program the focus ring as aperture rings in camera, so it's better than nothing, I guess. But if having an aperture ring is important, then I would definitely look into E-mount lenses or vintage lenses or something. Let's talk about the build of the camera. It's one of the reasons why Nikon cameras go to war and go to the moon, right? They are very sturdy and they feel like high quality, durable tools. I've used a few Fujifilm cameras before, especially the newer ones like the X-T50. The build just feel a little bit cheap and the paint comes up easily, and Fujifilm kept charging more for their cameras somehow. Fuji wasn't always like this too. I think they see all the hype going on with their cameras and decided that they are gonna milk this shit as much as possible. It's kinda sad, and I say that as someone who used to love Fuji cameras. The viewfinder of this camera is large and bright and pretty clear. The resolution is not as good as some of the higher end cameras. This viewfinder is the same resolution as the one on the 50S Mark II that I had before this. And yet somehow I found this one to be a little bit clearer and better. The screen of the camera is fine. I like it. I just close the screen and shoot it like a film camera for most of the time. Unless I'm shooting portraits and need to check the photos afterwards for critical focus. I love that I can close the screen though. It mimics the film camera experience, which makes this camera ever slightly bit more immersive to me. And second, I sweat a lot and I live in a tropical country. I always smear my sweats onto the screen, which feels pretty bad. I still prefer the viewfinder to be off to the side, and then I would have less of my face on the screen at all times. And closing the screen says battery too. Usually the Sony transformer ass screen would be the perfect screen, but you know. Camera wrist. Yeah, this one has lots of it. Is it vain to like how your camera look and feel?
I'm a fancy boy.
We are artists after all, and I think we can all appreciate beauty when it becomes present. The Nikon Zf has a beautiful classic design, mimicking the film cameras of yesteryears like the Nikon FM2. When I use my film cameras, I always have these little thoughts going on my head about how we don't make things like we used to. And the Nikon Zf is definitely a counter argument for that. All Leica users would tell you that using a nice tool matters a lot anyway, so yeah, I kinda agree with that statement. This camera battery is great. I have 2 spare batteries in my bag when I travel, but I've never busted them out before. Camera has USB-C charging too, so I just top up the camera when possible. There's only one thing I want to talk about in this department, and it's called highlight weighted metering. Highlight weighted metering is everything I wanted in modern cameras. Never again will I worry of blown highlights. The dynamic range of all modern cameras are so good that bringing the exposure up in post just doesn't really matter. But having your highlights be blown out absolutely does. I also bind the display button to toggle natural light view, so I can see the screen normally and still shoot with highlight weighted metering, which can make the scene look dark sometimes. It's just a nice feature that makes shooting fast way more seamless. I got 2 grips for this camera. This one is like the newer something, I don't remember. I'll put it on the screen. And I also have a kinda softer leather grip. That one doesn't have as much grip, but it's lighter, and that might just be all you needed. I think you can get away with using no grip with this camera too if you use smaller lenses like the Jupiter 50mm or this more Leica knockoff that I'll talk about in the next video. But for any heavier lenses, you should just have a grip. I'm not very thrilled about it since it's like another 100 grams added to the weight I have to carry around my neck, but you know, c'est la vie.
It is what it is.
Nikon could at least have a bigger thumb rest for this thing, I think, but they don't have that too, so you just have to accept that you need a grip, I think. This camera is like 700 grams in weight, and with the grip it's like a little bit over 800 grams, I think. And that's about the limit of what I would consider all-day camera able. I do envy the weight of the Sony A7C series sometimes, but you know, I'd still prefer to have the dials. I also usually mount my action camera on top of my main camera like this. It's another few hundred grams on my neck, so every bit of weight saving counts. The JPEGs are great if you want something that just works, you know, like a nice, clean, professional look. The rich tone portrait profile of this camera make great looking skin tones. They do actually look quite nice, but it's just not my cup of tea. These days I'm more into getting the lo-fi film look, but you know, I can appreciate them as is. I don't really use recipes anymore, as I've been quite satisfied with my editing and my colors these days. But I really appreciate that you can literally just do anything under the sun with this camera and the recipe and the Nikon Imaging Cloud software. You can basically put all your edits into the JPEGs with the NX Studio, and then you can put that edit up to the Nikon Imaging Cloud thing, and then everyone can use that. If you import your RAWs onto NX Studio, then you would get all your recipes edit from there, which is kinda cool honestly. I don't really care about video features on my photo camera. I prefer to have separate things for separate uses. But I'll say that this camera with its dedicated video switch is nice. You get 4K 10-bit analog, which is all I need for my videos. Stabilization is not as good as the action cam, so you have to be very steady when you're shooting video on the Nikon Zf. But you know, I actually find it nice to have video features on my camera when it's like a vacation or something and I don't want any extra gear. Let's talk about some quirks. The white balance of this camera often leans a bit warm. It's not a big deal really, since I always tweak my white balance in post. And I generally like the white balance to be on the warm side as well, so there's also something that no one told me about the Nikon Warp. It's that the lens mount is reversed, which is a little bit weird. Shit. All my outer cameras and all the outer mounts I've tried, the lens mount goes the other way, so yeah, it still trips me up. There's also the extra PASM dials on top of the vintage dials on this camera, which might be weird to some people, and it was kinda weird to me at first too. I shoot aperture priority most of the time, but with this kind of setup I can say put my shutter dial to the flashing speed, and then if I want to shoot flash, I just switch this PASM dial to shutter priority, and then the camera is set at the shutter speed here. I still think the Fuji way is a little bit better with the auto switch built into the shutter dials and the lens. But yeah, it's just different. The menu system of this camera is a little bit convoluted. But then again, I've never used a Nikon before. I heard the menus were kept the same for all the past Nikon, so professionals would have an easier time switching between cameras. And I guess that's nice too. So many random things that kinda don't make sense that you have to look for. Like how you needed to change settings on like 2 different places just to put a photo review timer on. I am no stranger to menu diving. Every time I get into a new camera system, I just go through the whole menu a few times just so I can set up everything the way I want. Nikon seems to be the brand that gives me the most pauses. I also wish there was like another custom button or two. Surely there could have been another button on the back here for AF on. There is also no dedicated AF MF switch, and there's not even an option in the menu. You have to press this button and switch the dial to change it from single and continuous autofocus. And obviously on all manual lenses, it's not even a problem, so yeah. This Nikon Zf is affordable for a full-frame camera, and the 40mm that comes with it is amazing too. The price of Nikon cameras have been quite competitive, I think. And I think this single Nikon Zf just, I don't know, kinda invalidated the whole Fuji camera lineup for professionals. Have you seen the price of an X100 Mark VI these days still? It's absolutely ridiculous. For whatever price in US dollars of this camera, you get like full frame image quality, which I think is a really big step up from APS-C.
It is big.
You get crazy good manual focus experience, rivaling Leica rangefinders. You get the retro vintage dials, the build and the look of the camera.
I'm a fancy boy.
In-body image stabilization, decent video specs, The whole 9 yards really. In the end, I think it's important to really ask yourself, what do you need from your camera? I like manual focus lenses, and so it's great if the camera helps me use them to their full potential. I like the dial so I can dial in my settings before turning the camera on. I need IBIS because, I don't like tripods. What I don't need is high megapixels. I don't need fast burst rate or any more video features than this. And I am a little bit vain, as it turns out.
I'm a fancy boy.
I want my camera to look nice and be fun and tactile to use. And this camera has quite a bit of grip to its looks, especially with one of these manual lenses. I've stopped shooting film cameras mostly because of all the faffing around I needed to do on airports. But I still get those cameras out and hold them on my hands and just, cock the shutter from time to time just to feel that dopamine hit. And I think this camera is a good alternative to that. And yeah, so that's it. It's a long video, I think. You figure out what you want and buy the cameras that fit your needs. I guess that's my message. And I'll see you guys around.